Presentation from the Main Street Bypass Committee. If you would come up, please. You need to use the mic.
Gotta use the mic.
Terry.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor. Jay. I'm the Chairman, Paul Capagna, of the Main Street Bypass Committee. It's an advisory committee on the road. And I would like to share with you some of the findings that we've come across over the last few months of discussing the project, some of the options that we see that are on the table, and some of the recommendations that we have. I'm going to skip the vision statement, but let's go to the project as a whole. The project as a whole is going to go from Sayreville Boulevard all the way down to Chevalier. And in between, it will have connections at Kimball East, Kimball West. It'll have connections by Town Lake. Phase 1 of the project currently goes from Sayreville Boulevard by Town Lake and ends at Kimball Drive East in the Main Street development. And that phase has been approved by the DEP. Okay. How did we get here? We did a DEP submission on October 16, 2009. That submission was rejected on 9/28/2010. We did a second submission, 9/26/2013, and finally, it was approved on 4/10/2014.
A question for the public. It is my understanding that this is the normal interaction with the DEP on something like this. Jay, I think you stated that several times.
That's correct, Mayor. This one was a little different. We had an appeal. After the original rejection, the borough filed an appeal. That was at the state, back and forth through the appeal process, and finally we met with them and they suggested resubmitting the application, which we did, and we eventually received the approval.
Please continue.
All right, so now that Phase 1 is approved, we have some available options on the table. We could proceed with Phase 1 construction, and that would be by Sayreville Boulevard by Town Lake to Kimball Drive East. We could submit DEP applications for Phase 2. We could decide to do Phase 2 and 3 at the same time. We also, because of some of the traffic issues, parking issues, et cetera, with Kimball Drive East, could do a redesign ending at Kimball Drive West. We could request that the county consider installing a traffic light on Main Street and Kimball Drive East to deal with some of the traffic situations that we have there. And we could also consider removing the gate at Baumhurst and Sayreville Boulevard to allow better egress to the community, Sheffield Mews, et cetera. And those are some of the available options that we have.
Do you have recommendations?
We do have some recommendations. Let's just talk real quick about Phase 2. So Phase 2 of the project goes from Kimball Drive East and comes out on Crosman. Phase 2 of the project, in my opinion, I think Jay agrees with me, is the most difficult part of the project. Correct, Jay?
That's correct. That involves constructing a bridge to cross over Birch Creek. So there's a lot of property you have to acquire from the steel mill and also permits you have to obtain from the state. So that's going to be a difficult permit to obtain.
Yeah, because of the difficulty with Phase 2, we think we have some recommendations, and we think, number one, we should petition the county to install traffic light at Kimball Drive East and Main Street. There have been a few accidents at that intersection, and it also is a situation trying to get out.
Just tip it up sometimes.
Bang it.
Technology.
You there? Okay. In the mornings, it's very difficult to come out back onto Main Street. I personally have seen school buses trying to make that left-hand turn out of Kimball Drive East to get on Main Street, and have seen the school bus across both lanes waiting for somebody to let them out. So we think that no matter what, installing a traffic light there is a good recommendation. We also think that opening up Baumhurst and Sayreville Boulevard is another good recommendation to allow better egress into the community. Right now, Wilkshire is the only avenue for emergency personnel. I don't know if you remember, there was an accident on Main Street a couple years ago where somebody had a telephone pole and they basically shut down. There was no way in or out of that community outside of Wilkshire.
Bless you.
Thank you.
We also believe, because Phase 2 is the most difficult part of the entire project, we believe that we should have engineering plans drawn up for Phase 2, and we should submit those to the DEP. And those are our recommendations.
Are there any questions from the governing body?
Just a comment. You are aware that it should help, it definitely won't be everything, that there will be a light put up. Matter of fact, when going out to bid in April, right?
The county is currently reviewing the revised plans. Once they approve it, then it's going to go to bid. So
Which is going to be White Oaks and Main Street, so it should at least create a little break in traffic. It won't be directly at that, but it'll make it a little bit better. There'll be a break.
And I'm
I
sure,
just wanted you to know that, just in case you weren't
I
aware.
appreciate that, and I'm sure at some point or another be back and can give you an update whether or not, that change has impacted the community at all in a beneficial way.
Are there any other questions from the governing body?
Yes, Mayor, I have a question. It might not be specifically to the Main Street Bypass Committee, but I was just curious on where we are with the funding on the project. I know I got some preliminary numbers a couple weeks ago, but we originally...
Jay, do you have,
Mayor, initially, the borough received a $10 million grant from the state to construct the roadway. I think we received only a portion of that, and the state stopped issuing funds to the borough because of the progress, because of the delays with the state getting permits. I think Wayne could probably give specifics as to how much we've received. I think it was out of 4 of the 10 we received?
We've received $4 million out of the $10 million so far. Okay.
So I only
Have
saw,
we s-
I saw that we only got $2 million. I thought we only got $2 million of that.
No, we got
Do you know how much we expended of that
payments.
money so far?
almost $2 million. I'd say about $1.7 million, yeah, about $1.7 million.
are there any other questions or comments?
Yes,
Mayor,
Mayor, if you don't mind. Oh, Arthur, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dave. Just one comment on Bamehurst. Everybody thinks that there's a gate there. There's not a gate there. There's a guardrail, an iron guardrail that no emergency vehicles can get through. So what we're doing is we're leaving Sheffield Town at the mercy of one entrance and exit. And I think that's something that we have to look at sooner than later, just for the protection of the residents who live not only in Sheffield Town, but Sheffield Mews, because if something does happen out at Main Street, there's no way anybody can get in, any emergency vehicles at all. And the guardrail goes completely across the road as well as the side of the road, so you can't even get around it, and then behind it, there's a mound.
Arthur, while you have the microphone, will you explain to the public the composition of the bypass committee?
The composition was made up, there's 2 residents from Modulesky, 2 residents from Main Street Townhouses. The people who were on from Sheffield have resigned over the years, and we've put out feelers, and nobody else has come forth. I've been at the meetings just as a facilitator and answer any questions that I can. Really, the authority on everything has been Jay, who, has the intimate knowledge of everything that's going on with the bypass.
Jay, if I may, quick question for you. How has this plan changed from the original conception plan where we got the funding? Has it changed?
There's one change on the second phase with the tie-in on Crossman Road. Originally, it was going to run straight through. The bypass road was going to be kind of parallel to Main Street. What the bypass committee recommended a few years ago was that Crossman Road and the bypass form a T intersection. That way, the bulk of the traffic would be on Crossman as opposed to on the bypass road. But aside from that, the concept has remained the same.
So for almost $2 million, we had one change.
Well, the money was spent mainly on, you had probably $200,000 or $300,000 of that was just on permit fees going back and forth with the different outside agencies. And even though you received DEP approval, you still have other agencies that still have to review and approve Phase 1, MCUA, Freehold Soil, and the Army Corps of Engineers. Those permits are still pending. So before you can start any type of construction, those 3 agencies would have to at least approve the Phase 1 portion of the project.
Would you have any idea what kind of time frame that would entail?
Well, they were put on hold because of the DEP. Once the DEP denied the application, the other agencies put everything on hold, so it's been reactivated. They're in the process. We've been meeting with MCUA because the road is going to be built directly on top of their force main, so they have concerns with the added weight because you have to build up the roadway over their force main. So there's some engineering issues that we're working with them. The other agencies, Army Corps and Freehold Soil, are currently reviewing. I would anticipate Freehold Soil probably in the next month will approve everything. Army Corps has been difficult to get status reports for them, but they do have it and they are reviewing it.
In the past, Army Corps, how long does it take? Is it
It
like
could
going
be,
through
it
God?
could be 6 months to a year. It's difficult to obtain Army Corps permit.
Mayor, if I also might, I know that a year and a half ago, we met with the Army Corps maybe a year, yeah, it's gotta be a year and a half, almost 2 years ago.
That was DEP, Mike, and
No, I
that's,
thought it was the Army Corps also, because they had offices up there, and they were favorable with respect to this. But it was a while ago. It does take some time there.
yeah, we went to Trenton to meet with the DEP on the approval of their
Right.
permits, and
Right.
as a result of that, we were able to resubmit the application and
Right.
eventually get the approval.
Are there any other questions or comments on the
Mayor, if you don't
Main
mind.
Street? Council President?
How long has the bypass committee been in effect?
I believe it goes back all the way till 2009, Jay?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Yeah, I've only been on the committee now for about, I'd say about a year.
I know you gentlemen work very hard on this, and especially since the meetings are held in the evening, it takes a lot of time out of your day. When do you anticipate any type of something shovel-ready? When do you think bypass will start?
I mean, it really all comes down to what the council takes as the recommendation on how to proceed from here.
And when would we get that?
It's up to the governing body.
Yeah, it's
This
up to
is
the
an
governing body
advisory,
to make a decision.
group
Yeah.
Made up
And-
of area residents who are directly impacted
And
by the
and
by
rightfully
the
so.
road.
I'm very happy it's area residents, but
Thank you.
that's almost, you were given 2 million to start, I'm sorry, 4 million to start?
They weren't given any, the governing body was
Hold
given
on,
the money.
hold on. You were given 4 minutes to start.
They weren't given any money.
How much money has been spent so far?
Believe what he's saying is 2 million, but it wasn't up to us to make the decision ultimately how the money was spent.
Who made that decision?
The
Governing
governing
body.
body.
Okay. When the governing body made that, did they know that they were getting Thursday night meetings?
I think it's an advisory committee based on the impact of
Yeah. Oh, no, I think you're
the
doing a great
impact.
job. I
Yeah,
think you're
no,
doing a
no.
great job.
It's not a committee that will ultimately make the decisions on how the road is designed, how the road
Yeah.
is built. I think the committee that we're in is basically, it's a concern of how the road may impact communities
Yeah.
and give just recommendations, but ultimately has no power in what will happen or how it will happen.
Yeah, because you know much more than I do about this, but without the bypass and the point coming, the streets are going to be clogged.
Listen,
Choked.
I absolutely 100% agree with that. I think in my personal opinion, but the bypass needs to be as a whole as opposed to sections. If it doesn't go from one end of town to the other, there's no point of having
There's no
it.
point to it, yes. No,
Correct.
we're not looking for roads to nowhere.
There is point. I mean, it gives an access, a rear access to all these residential areas on that Phase 1 that would not have it already. Right now, they have no way of getting out some of these streets. The first phase would give that way out. If
Correct.
something happened, if an accident happened at the end of Bamehurst, they would have a back way out if we went with that plan with removing the guardrail and having Phase 1 available. Further down the road, the residents have the same issues. I think getting Phase 1 is important to start it up and let's get going on it. I mean, this was 2007, the money was allotted. We're 2015, we had 2 major incidents this year alone that clogged up every road in our town. It's something that we need to move forward on now, I believe.
And
I'm sorry.
no,
Did you?
I spoke once already.
I just have a question. As I'm looking at these numbers, I see 5 years. You mentioned 2007, Dan, I'm going with the 2009 number, so unless you know of 2007.
2007 was the ordinance when we received the money first $2 million from the state.
Okay, so that's going to extend this timeline from the 5 years even further back. So my question is, okay, from 2007 all the way till current, you're looking at a $2 million expenditure, but we don't have anything really to stick a flag in yet. I wanted to know, you meet every month, do we get bypass committee meetings? Minutes, I'm sorry.
Yes, there are meetings. There are
I'm
minutes.
sorry,
Minutes are
minutes.
maintained, agendas are prepared, yes.
Okay, do we receive those minutes here? Because I don't recall seeing any since I came on board here.
Recently, I only received one set of minutes.
Only one set of minutes.
That's recently.
That's recently. So I don't know how anybody else feels here, but when I see a project that has taken a significant amount of time at a significant cost, with money obviously going to continue to dwindle as we move forward with, potentially Phase 1, Phase 2, I would like to see those minutes to see where we stand so that progress continues to move.
Sure. I have no
Hold on,
problem.
just so everyone understands, this was started because when this originally began, the neighborhoods in the area, whether it was Main Street Townhome, the Horseshoe Road neighborhood, the Sheffield, Park Village, there was great concern. So I started the advisory committee, and let me capitalize, italicize, and underline the word advisory. They are a group of area residents who are directly impacted by this bypass road. I created it so that they would have impact and input over how this was designed. They are not leading the bypass road. They have no legal authority over it. They, as concerned homeowners of the area that will be affected by it, they have input into the process. The only people with any control on this Main Street bypass is the governing body, not the bypass committee. There's a very big mistake being made up here. They do not control the money, they do not spend the money, they do not direct the money. They are the people who live in that area who will be directly impacted, and it is their way of having input into how it will be constructed, which roads will be connected, and that is their function. The rest of it is not their function. I'm very grateful that they have taken the time, the interest, and the dedication. This is a lot of work that they do. And Arthur, I want to thank you for being the facilitator here. They have put, it's unimaginable the amount of time that they put in here, but they don't control the dime.
So,
They
Mayor-
do not
so,
control
Mayor,
a dime.
Mayor, are you just saying this in reference to my question to have minutes?
No,
before-
you can have all the minutes you want. You know, there's no big secret about that. But there's a misunderstanding here about what their function is. And their function is, they live there. This is really going to affect them. This is going to impact them, and they want to have a say in it, and that's why I formed it. As far as saying it's going to go this way, that way, they don't have anything, any power with that. That's strictly up here with the governing body, with the 6 council people. So to say to them, what have you done with our money? They haven't done anything with it. We have done something with it. We have spent it, not them.
That's fine, that's fair. I also want to say that I'm very grateful for anybody that volunteers. And I actually lived in Main Street Townhomes for a number of years on Delicat Lane. Loved my time there, and I only moved a little bit down the road. So I'm right off of right on Wick Drive. So this definitely impacts me. I have a vested interest in this bypass as well. My only question was, and I wasn't saying that these individuals were the ones that were spending this money. You mentioned advisory committee. I think our rec is an advisory committee also, and they still help to guide decisions for the council, give us some information, let us make informed decisions. So I wasn't implying
Well,
that they're the ones.
that's why Arthur arranged for them to make a presentation tonight.
I think that's great that you did that, Arthur. I wish that we had this presentation a little bit earlier, considering this was something started 2007, 2009. But I'm grateful that you're here today, and I appreciate the
Well, this is
presentation.
the
They
first
did have
time.
presentations, but the former chairperson passed away.
Vicky, and I have,
And that-
I have
that
no
put-
problem with minutes, getting you minutes,
Perfect.
so let us
Thank
know
you.
And
the
you
best
did
procedure to
receive the
do that,
last
and we'll
minutes
handle it.
on Friday in your
That's-
packet.
Are there any
perfect.
other
Thank you.
questions or
Thank you.
comments?
I
Yes,
just,
Mayor, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
Again, how long have you been on bypass?
I personally have been on it for about a year, somewhere around
And
there.
you're a volunteer.
I'm a volunteer, correct?
Thank you very much. It's,
Mayor?
Mary, go
that's
ahead.
wonderful that you do that kind of thing, because volunteerism is a tough thing to find these days. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mary.
I just want to say I appreciate volunteerism in this town. We happen to have we're very lucky in this town to have the amount of volunteers we do. I know that in the past, was my understanding that the Main Street Committee did not want this through. But I think everybody has learned, sadly, what's been happening over the past few years, that any tiny thing that goes on in town, the whole town gets tied up for hours. I couldn't even get out of my driveway. I happen to live on Scarlet Drive, and that's where they were directing the traffic through. This would be the road where the residents would be alleviated, when the road that most of the passerbys use, which is Main Street, just trying to get through town, this is really going to help the residents most of all, and as a volunteer first aider, it's really going to help us, because there are just times where if the traffic gets tied up at all. We even have difficulty getting there with an ambulance. So wonderful presentation, and I hope we just march forward now. We're doing whatever we have to do to get this completed so that all the residents in town will, have this option. I'm all for a lot of options.
Mary, just a clarification on that. Main Street Committee, even before I was involved with it, had always recommended the bypass. What you heard was that if it only went to Kimball Drive East, their concern was that the Phase 2 and 3 were not going to be done. The Board of Education had moved bus stops into Main Street townhomes, and their concern was the traffic coming through with children, with trucks, which the Police Department and Planning Board had said could go on the Main Street bypass. Then they would be going on Kimball Drive East. That's where the concern, and some people took that to say they were against it. They were never against it. They always approved it.
Well,
There's never been a vote not to, for
I'm
them
not
to
talking-
recommend that.
I'm not talking about recently. I'm talking about years ago, what Mr. Kaiserman was on there.
Right,
And he was
yeah, you're right.
a friend, and
Yeah,
he
he
was
didn't want-
very
right.
much against it.
Right, but the
And I
total,
guess that's where I
but the
was getting
total
my
committee.
information from.
But I do think what we can take out of tonight is I think we have to seriously look at Bamehurst, because if we're so concerned about Sheffield Town, right now, and for the last whatever number of years, and the road is back there, Sayreville Boulevard is there, it's paved, we're not going to make it. That road is existing, except for the barrier that blocks people getting to that road. I took a ride on my way to the council meeting tonight. I rode to the end of the road just to make sure that it was there.
Jay, do you know why was it just never opened?
Well, this goes back to the 1980s. When Sheffield Town originally was approved, the original approval required a connection of Sayreville Boulevard to Bainhurst Avenue. Bainhurst Avenue residents came to the mayor and council and said, we don't want the road open, we're concerned about additional traffic. So at that point, the council decided to go through, and initially it was going to be a gate to have for emergency access, and eventually that turned into a barrier. But it was basically objections by the residents of Bainhurst Avenue.
Okay, but would it entail a lot of money to open it now, or no?
It would not, and you can do it, if you don't want to open it, you can just put that emergency gate in. That way, in case of emergencies, your fire officials and first aiders can go through and access it to provide an opening to let Sayreville Boulevard be used in case there's a problem on Main Street.
But there wouldn't be any big problem with just opening it? Okay, thank you.
Jay, what
Just for the general public, let me go over this thing. So the money was received in a grant in 2009. 2007. It took several years to put together a DEP submission, which was submitted on October 16, 2009. A little bit, 13 months later, or just about 12 months later, actually, the initial submission was rejected by the DEP on September of 2010. So 3 years later, it was resubmitted after, I guess, numerous negotiations, Jay?
Correct.
And rewriting and, trying to find out what the DEP would want in order to make it work. So it was submitted September 6, 2013, and then it was March 10th of 2014 that we received, or that the borough received approval for this phase. Then the borough engineer needed to speak with the Army Corps and the MCUA, and what was the third?
Freehold soil conservation.
This is, when we built the boat ramp, it was a very arduous process requiring many applications, many rejections, and it's not uncommon because there's so many wetlands involved, or the crossing of wetlands. But again, to reiterate, the Main Street Bypass Committee is an advisory committee that I put together of concerned area residents that this road would directly impact themselves, their lifestyles, their homes. And they wanted a voice in it, and this gave it to them. So they spend, like I said, a great deal of time studying this, looking at it, and once or twice a year, they'll make a presentation to the mayor and council on what they would like. They then go back to their neighbors, their homeowners association for more input. It's not a quick process. Are there any other questions or comments?
I just have one. How far back do you go with the presentations? For someone that,
I'm currently unsure. I could look back in the notes
Nice.
and get back to you,
Just
but
get some history.
this is my first.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Jay, what's our next step?
Well, I think the first thing that has to happen is the three outstanding permits, the Army Corps, Freehold Soil, and MCOA have to be obtained. Once they're obtained, the council will have to decide about the construction of Phase 1. Do you want to move forward with the construction of Phase 1? If you do you want to take into consideration the recommendations the committee is making before you go through and construct Phase 1? The other decision is, what do you want to do with Phase 2? The recommendation is the road should not stop at Kimball East. It should be extended at least to Crossman Road. Eventually, it'll be extended to the National Ed property, but because that is in limbo at this point, the design hasn't been finalized on that property, I think there's some concerns with making applications for that third phase. The second phase, you could go through and kind of run a parallel course where you have permits pending at the DEP for the second phase while you're getting your other permits for the first phase. I think that's really what the recommendation is.
Correct.
You need to move forward with that second phase because the committee's, one of their major recommendations is that that road does not stop at Kimball East. It eventually is at least extended until Crossman Road, until the National Ed property develops.
What would be our cost? About approximately our cost for that?
For the
Phase 2 to Crossman's Road from Kimball East.
the construction cost is probably a couple $1 million construction cost.
Hey, Jay, well, we're looking at what, 10 million on the line? The line number was 10 million?
The initial grant you received was
Yeah,
for 10 million,
okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank the committee.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much.
Jerry?
Do we need to make the decisions tonight, Mayor? At least
Jay?
a minute ago?
Do you need direction from the
Well, I think,
council?
Mayor, if the council wants to move forward with the second phase, you typically would have a resolution authorizing that. So if you like, I can prepare that, speak with Wayne and get that on
Well,
your
the
agenda.
council would need to decide which option or options they wish to entertain
Well, Mayor, at this point, you're
of the
not,
recommendations.
you're not ready to go to construction with Phase 1. The only thing you could authorize at this point, if you want to move forward with the second phase design and proceeding with those permits, you could do that.
So that we're not stagnant, just waiting here for
Correct.
the
At least
permits
that's
for
moving
Phase
forward
1.
as well, yes.
And at the same time, open Bainhurst. We can do
That's
that right
something
away?
you can probably in-house through your Public Works Department. They
Jay,
probably
would
could
you
do
put
that.
this under your report on the agenda portion?
Sure, I will, Mayor.
Thank you.
Do you want
Make
this
a
in the
motion,
form of a...
can we make a motion to do it tonight?
Yeah.
Listen, you have
Madam
5
Mayor.
votes, you can do whatever you want.
Hey, look at that, the peanut gallery's here.
I'm glad you realized that. Okay, I make a motion that we authorize the engineers to start filing permits for the next phase of this at the same time while we're waiting for the other phase, and open Bainhurst Avenue, and even maybe at the same time see if the county is amenable to another light on Main Street. Let's do it all at once, so we're not held up.
So Mayor, you're suggesting that we open it up totally, Bainhurst, or do the security gate?
I'm for opening it entirely, so people can
Yeah.
drive through and get off, Main Street if they need to. The residents sometimes come out, this way, if they're going in the opposite direction, they can go down, get out that way. It's difficult sometimes for the residents to even make a right out of there and go the other way in the county, down the county road.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments? Roll call?
Councilpersons Buchanan,
Yes.
Kilpatrick,
Yes.
McGill,
Yes.
Melendez.
Just a comment on traffic. Do we do any study to make sure that the street currently has the ability to, so I know a kid got hit there last year, and I believe there was not enough speed signs. Maybe you guys can speak to that. Baumhurst? Yeah, I believe there was a, right. So I'm asking a question. Is there anything else that we should have done, or that streets prepared for additional traffic is my question?
I know that the Traffic Bureau has reviewed in conjunction
Is that something we can look at?
Yeah.
I think maybe you want to refer that to your traffic safety division to have them just comment on whether it's a gate or whether it's a permanent opening at this point.
Okay, do I have to amend my, okay. Bamehurst should be referred to the police department to decide whether we should have an emergency gate or totally open, and that we proceed with all of the phases of these in conjunction with each other.
Well, what we should do is, we should just vote on this motion that's before, and then, I'm sorry,
Speak into the mic.
into the mic.
Thank you.
We need to vote on the motion that's on the table, and then you can make.
Amend it.
Then you make another motion to have it referred to the
I
traffic.
can't hear you, Mike.
To have it referred to the traffic engineer. How did I do? All right.
All right, so continue to vote if you would, please.
So this roll call vote is on the first motion that was made. Councilman Melendez,
Yes.
Novak,
Yes,
Rittenhouse.
Yes.
I can go ahead and amend the motion.
No, make it a separate motion.
okay. I make a motion that we amend the first motion and send the Bamehurst part of it to the traffic safety first to see whether we should have just the emergency gate or open the road entirely.
Second?
Roll call?
Thank you.
Councilperson Buchanan,
Yes.
Kilpatrick,
Yes.
Gill,
Yes.
Melendez,
Yes.
Novak,
Yes,
Rittenhouse.
Yes.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to open the public portion on ordinance 28415, an ordinance to supplement and amend chapter, what's that, 19 of the Water and Sewer.
14.
Barb?